The moves for the Golden State Warriors to get better this offseason involve Jonathan Kuminga some way, somehow, one way or another. Whether it's internally, he gets better, he fits in, or the Warriors potentially sign and trade him. What's the best case scenario? What's the worst case scenario? We're talking about it with Matt Kolski on today's Locked On Dubs.
You are Locked On Warriors.
Stop trying to turn the page on us so fast.
Your daily Golden State Warriors podcast.
We got 4 championships.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Every team has a chance if Steph's on the team.
Your team every day.
What's the good word, everyone? We appreciate you for making Locked On Warriors a part of your day. We're brought to you by FanDuel, and right now new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Ways that you can check out this show. We're always streaming live on YouTube. We're always, wherever you get your audio podcasts, you can take us on the go, and we always very much appreciate you joining the program. My guest today is Matt Kolski, formerly of 95.7 The Game in the Bay Area. That's the flagship station of the Golden State Warriors. He also covered the team for KNBR. My name, your host, Charlie Walter, also formerly of 95.7 The Game, and also covered the team for CBS News Bay Area. All right, Kolski. There were so many times this season where I said, will you just shut up about Kuminga and focus on the Warriors winning Game 6? And the reason that I always tried to put that on the back burner is because I knew that it was going to be a long summer of JK talk. Everything that stands in the Warriors' way of getting better involves Kuminga in some capacity, whether they give him more of an opportunity and they find a place in the rotation for Kuminga, whether it's through a sign and trade, whether it's through a whole bunch of trades to where all of a sudden Kuminga becomes a focal point. I don't expect that one to happen, but we're finally going to break it down, Kolski. Welcome to you. It's been a minute. I've not talked to you since the final horn sounded in Minnesota.
Hey, man. How's it going? Nice to see you.
It's good, man. It's good.
Yeah, it's going to be a summer of JK stuff. I have so many questions. There are a lot of potential options, but they all require, A, the cooperation of Jonathan Kaminga, and B, a team that is really interested in his talent. And it's going to be fascinating to see how many of those there are.
Let's go to the Steve Kerr conversation that he had with Tim Kawakami and then with Willard and Dibbs just like a day later. He was on felt like a JK media tour, even though he answered a ton of topics. The Kuminga stuff really stood out because he was almost talking about Kuminga as if, there wasn't really a future there. Like if you're reading the tea leaves, then every once in a while he'd sprinkle in, well, JK's told us that he's going to stay here in the offseason. Really the first time he's been around the facilities. We're going to work him in. He's our top priority this offseason. JK's a big part of this team. Me and JK have a great relationship. Well, let's start with that. The JK and I have a great relationship type thing. One, let's give the kudos to Jonathan Kaminga. Hasn't responded to any of these comments. He's what we think, is put his head down and gone to work and has not listened to any of these comments from his head coach. You think they were fair or foul? The comments from Kerr kind of, talking up, putting Kuminga on a pedestal in one regard, but then in the same sentence, basically saying like, look, I'm here to win games and he doesn't help us win games.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what to think. The fact that Steve Kerr, well, you kind of pointed out, right? I mean, he's choosing a bizarre middle ground that seems untenable to me. But what do I know? The Warriors just keep trotting Kuminga back out there, or putting him back on the bench anyway. So I don't know what they're thinking. I don't know if there is conflict between Steve and the front office. He sort of, I don't want to say he implied that, but he basically was like, there was a part during the Tim Kawakami interview where he sort of said, look, I coach to win games and whatever the hell the front office is doing is their business. But like when I get to the court on any given game night, I'm going to play the players I think give me the best chance to win. And like, we get it, bro. We get that you don't like Jonathan Kuminga. Okay, I get it. But the fact that after what we watched with Kuminga in the playoffs after Steph went out, the fact that he persists in pushing a narrative that there's just no way this guy could help us. Look, if I thought he could help us, I'd put him in the game. Well, obviously he could have helped you. And if you're saying I am not creative enough as a coach to find a way to have a team with Steph Curry that can use Jonathan Kuminga, then that is really a pretty gross, I don't know, malpractice, failure as a coach, because the talent is obvious and remarkable. Does he make mistakes? Sure. Are there some fit challenges? Absolutely. But
what I thought was crazy, man. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
because he
go ahead.
basically said that he doesn't fit on the floor with Curry and Draymond at the same time because they're turnover-prone players. He said it just doesn't make sense to throw those three in the same lineup, especially when Jimmy Butler commands the ball, Steph Curry needs the ball in his hands, and then to throw Kuminga in there, sure, right? But to go from, because you have an option, 7 minutes, 6 minutes, whatever. Curry doesn't play the entire game. And to not even throw him in there in those moments or in mop-up duty late in the season when he was going to Santos and Kevin Knox and some of these guys, it almost felt like the DNPs were personal to some degree. And based on the way he talks about the relationship, we got a great relationship. Then it makes it seem like it was actually all basketball related. And it can't just be all basketball related because, look, I'm not a huge Jonathan Kaminga guy like you are, but he's at the very least good, right?
I mean, again, I keep saying this. I get that I come off as a diehard Kuminga guy because of how focused I am on it. But what makes me so focused on this bizarre saga is less an unrealistic or out over my skis belief in Kuminga, and more a belief that he's clearly good enough to figure out what he is. And that the thing that bothers me is that the Warriors, and in particular Steve Kerr, seem uninterested in even figuring out what he is in any meaningful way, because he is so concerned about, I guess, winning any given night's game. But again, none of these comments from Kerr hold up to any scrutiny, because if you look at who is playing in games they lost over the course of the season, it's guys like Guy Santos and Pat Spencer. And I get it. It's great when Guy gets your offensive rebounds, but you're never going to convince me that those minutes in games that were lost anyway wouldn't have been better spent helping Jonathan Kuminga learn some of the stuff that you want him to learn and putting him in better positions to do some of the other things that you want him to do in terms of rebounding and, locking in better on defense. But the approach of sending him to the bench for another month if he has a bad rebounding game is just, I'm trying so hard not to use words I can't use on this podcast. It's wildly insane. So I kind of thought that we would see one of two approaches from Steve Kerr this offseason, and that they would be telling, in the absence of any comment from Mike Dunleavy or Joe Lacob. And really, Lacob when Lacob talks, he pretends he's not in charge, But I like Jonathan Kuminga. We'll see what the GM decides, that sort of thing. So that doesn't help. Dunleavy isn't talking really. I thought Kerr would either go, listen, Jonathan Kuminga has a lot of talent, and I think he can be a really good player, but he doesn't fit with our team, and we have not had the luxury of developing him, even though I don't think that's true. I thought it would be hard line, it's not a fit. Or, and I thought this was more likely, hard line, my bad. I really, if you had made me bet, what is Steve Kerr going to say about Jonathan Kuminga when the season's over, after what we saw against Minnesota, my bet would have been, guys, I messed up. I couldn't see the forest for the trees. I couldn't see a way to make Kuminga fit. watching what he was able to do in a playoff matchup in difficult circumstances, I should have found a way to get him on the floor. He's too good not to be on the floor. And the reason you do that, if you're Steve Kerr, is twofold. Number one, you might be stuck with this guy. All right. Both sides of this thing may decide, based on how few teams have cap space and the lack of particularly exciting trade options, hey, not great, but another year together, or, a slightly shorter term contract, 3 years together, is the best thing for both sides. That could be where this ends up. And if it does, boy, it would be better to start off on a good note of, hey, as a coaching staff, we need to figure out how to make this guy play for us in a way that helps the team. Or you're going to trade him and you want to do everything you can to juice his value. But this weird middle ground of like, yeah, I stand by not playing him, he just didn't fit. And then also, but he's pretty awesome and I love him and we get along great. It's so bizarre. I don't know what to think of it. It strains my brain to imagine that it's the truth. But maybe it is, because I don't know why you would do this if it's not the truth.
Coming up, what's the best case scenario for Jonathan Kuminga and the Golden State Warriors? Sign and trade? Trying to work him into next year's team? We debate. That's ahead on Locked On Dubs. All right, let's tell you about America's #1 sports book. The NBA playoffs are almost done. Championship time just about here, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances. There are major momentum shifts. There always can't miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action than with FanDuel. They make it easy to stay in the game. You do it before tip-off or live. There are player props, performance trends, same-game parlays, more ways than ever to stay in the game and win big. My favorite thing to do is always player props, quite frankly. Sometimes the books, it's a little secret I have. Don't tell FanDuel now. But sometimes they just get them wrong. They put 17.5 for Jimmy Butler, and it's playoff Jimmy. He's going for 38. So you can always do a little sprinkle, a little salt-based sprinkle. How would $200 in bonus bets add to the excitement if that first $5 bet wins? New to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com, place your first $5 bet. If it wins, $200 in bonus bets, no questions asked. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. They asked him a question, like Willard and Dibbs straight up. They asked him some really telling questions, and Steve somehow found a way to just tap dance past everyone to where I was like, I know less about this situation after that answer than beforehand. But they straight up asked him, like, is this a matter of Kuminga, like, thinking he's more of a guard and a slasher and someone that wants to play around the perimeter, and you want him to play, down low in the dunker spot, and you just want him to play differently? Or he doesn't have it in him? Like, I don't know if I'm explaining this the right way, but basically just like, is JK not doing this and not being this version of himself that you want him to be because JK just flat out says, like, that's how I don't want to play that way, man? Or is it because, like, that's just not the way that he's built? And he didn't really have an answer. He's just, I don't know. I think JK has it in him, and and he just kind of danced around the entire thing. And that's what I'm always confused about, because half of me sees JK as someone that you put out on the perimeter, you give him the ball and you let him attack. And it's not half of me, it's all of me sees that. And then it's almost like Kerr sees him as someone that, should play down low, be in that dunker spot, be chasing loose balls, getting offensive rebounds, being like a Guy Santos energizer. And it's like, maybe that's just not the type of player that he is. And if that's the case, why is he still on the team? Like, did you think that this was going to change?
Right. Well, I mean, that's the other that's sort of the big matzo ball hanging out there, if you will, Seinfeld fans. If you're so sure he doesn't fit, why did you not move him at one of the many opportunities you've had to do so? And if you believe he can fit, why aren't you giving him the opportunity to get himself to a place where he's the player you want him to be? Steve Kerr referenced Sean Marion on the Kawakami pod. And I like, on its face, it makes a lot of sense. Why isn't JK Sean Marion? He can run and jump. He can finish around the basket. Sean Marion did end up being a decent three-point shooter, but
that shot
it was ugly. And Kuminga has had moments where he's been really good from three. It's just they don't want him taking bad pull-ups. You know, Steve Kerr's imagining him spotting up in the corners. Or that's what Sean Marion did, I should say. Attack the basket, mostly on dive cuts, not so much with the ball in his hands, and shoot corner threes when open, and then play devilish defense. And we can okay. Kuminga, when he's on the floor and in a decent place mentally, is a really good defender one-on-one. He is their best wing defender left on the team, in fact, in a one-on-one situation. He is not a great team defender because he is not the most aware, right? Offense, somewhat similar. He is a remarkable talent. He can do things with the ball in his hands, by the way, attacking the basket, that are, you know, top upper echelon of the NBA skills, but he doesn't always make the right play. I would say, like, having watched him for 4 years, he's a reasonably willing passer. He's just not a basketball genius. And really, when I started to think about the Sean Marion comparison, like, first of all, he's a much better ball hand. Like, Marion never dribbled his whole career. You know, Kuminga at 22 is a better one-on-one offensive player than Sean Marion ever was. So I think to have him be Sean Marion is a pretty confusing limiting of his skills, right? It does. I understand why it fits around Steph Curry, but like, if you want him to shoot corner threes, why did you spend so long telling him to stop shooting threes and benching him every time he did, right? Like, the mixed messaging is kind of crazy. And really what it is, and what I believe it is, what it seems most to be to me, is that Steve Kerr wants Jonathan Kuminga to be a basketball genius. And he's not. Okay? That doesn't mean he can't be great in this league. And in fact, you know, broadly speaking, basketball IQ improves as guys play more and get used to the NBA more, which, again, he has not really been given runway to do in ways that usually result in good development. But more to the point, he's never going to be Andre Iguodala or Sean Marion level IQ-wise, probably. He is, however, much more physically talented than those guys.
Even Jimmy Butler, he's not going to be the brain that Butler is, but
no, but he is physically incredible, and he's not an idiot. And in fact, I would argue that Steve Kerr regularly plays guys with significantly lower basketball IQ than Jonathan Kuminga.
But they can shoot. Buddy Hield.
Yes. And I love what Buddy gave them this year. And I would have no regrets about the Buddy Hield contract or the situation in general. Buddy, it's 2 thumbs up from me to Buddy. This is not about criticizing Buddy. It's about, again, if you scrutinize the comments that Steve Kerr makes about Jonathan Kuminga, they don't really hold up. And so it's weird. But it's my great hope that we're done with the why the hell does Steve Kerr hate Jonathan Kuminga question, because, like, it's my hope for all parties involved, including you and me, that this kid is playing somewhere else next season. That there should be a solution that involves the Warriors getting, if not more talented, at least more guys that can play for Steve Kerr, and another team getting a lot of potential and a young talent that might be something one day in Jonathan Kuminga. I hope and I believe that there will be an answer that solves this problem, because I just don't know that I can do it again.
I can't handle it, man. I can't handle another season of it.
I just don't even want to be leading up to game one being like, is this the year Kuminga gets to play 20 plus minutes a game?
It's an exhausting storyline,
It's
man.
exhausting.
And that's why I shut you down so many times in the season. It wasn't to be a jackass.
Of course, you were right to do so. I'm prepared to acknowledge that I can't help myself to everyone's detriment with this issue. But yeah, I again, for everyone's benefit, let everyone find a solution that puts Jonathan Kaminga on a team that wants him and gives the Warriors pieces that Steve Kerr wants to use.
Coming up, who's the ideal team that the Warriors would want to get involved in a Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade? The answer may surprise you a little. That's coming up. One of the teams, obviously, that we would look at in this situation is Boston, just because of their unique situation where they're probably not going to be competing next season. They also have to shed some payroll. They have older players, Porzingis, Drew Holiday. Who else could potentially be on the block from Boston? So you look at them as a potential, like Kuminga all of a sudden gets, Tatum's role in a buffer year to where he has the ball in his hands quite a bit. And then we'd see how that would fit if they came back. But to me, Boston, like a Drew Holiday, a Kristaps Porzingis, I don't know if that's even necessarily the move. I mean, maybe name-wise, yes. I brought up some names, and granted, look, I don't love this by any means, but I just brought up Toronto as a potential team because we heard that there was some OG Anunoby talk a few years ago. Like, that was the Warriors' big issue to me, is after a sophomore campaign where when Andrew Wiggins went out, he had his opportunity, and Gary Payton was hurt as well after the trade from Portland. So there was a lot of opportunity for Kuminga. In fact, I think he played just about as much his sophomore campaign as this past season, which is wild when you look at some of the minutes. But I thought he showed a lot of potential that season. He was shooting well, and there was talk of Pascal Siakam. There was talk of OG Anunoby, and they held on to him. And that, to me, didn't make a whole ton of sense. But I look at a team like Toronto now, and I brought up the name Emmanuel Quickley, who averages 17 and 6 assists and shoots the ball 37% and is a good, willing passer. Calipari used to always say that about Quick back at Kentucky. And he's solid, right? He played a big role on a Knicks team that won a playoff series a couple of years ago. Like, Quickly solid. He gives you a ball handling presence that you don't really have right now outside of Brandon Podziemski and Steph Curry. But you said straight up, you're like, if the best that the Warriors can do for Jonathan Kuminga is Emmanuel Quickley, then shame on this entire situation.
It'd be a real bummer. I mean, Emmanuel Quickley has a big contract for who he is.
What's the exact price there?
32 and a half.
32 a year for Quick?
Yeah.
Never mind. Forget that I said that.
So you would have
Cam Johnson.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. That means the Raptors have to want to pay Jonathan Kaminga in the neighborhood of $32.5 million.
Yeah. At that point, just take Drew Holiday and take his defense,
Yeah, Drew makes only about $1 million more than that. And I think in many ways is a better fit. Age-wise lines up a little more with the old guys the Warriors have, which might not be a good thing, but much better defender, at least theoretically, than Emmanuel Quickley. Much more calming presence. I mean, Quickley can score, and he's a go guy. He makes stuff happen on the floor. Not always excellent stuff. Can be a little turnover prone, and just isn't like he's a decent 3-point shooter, but not a great shooter. Not an efficient guy overall. And yeah, do they need that? I'm not sure. I guess it depends how much development you expect from Brandon Podziemski and, how much you expect Moses Moody to play more of a guard role.
So what to you is the best JK outcome? Because you were just saying that you hope that there is no situation next year where we're going into next season asking how Kuminga is going to fit, which would point to a sign and trade. The Cam Johnson name's been thrown around. We now hear Porzingis, Michael Porter Jr. is a betting favorite, a bunch of injured guys that really do fit the system and fit what the Warriors are trying to do if healthy, especially Kristaps. But that to me is terrifying. You cannot bank on that in the situation that you're in. you go with a sure thing that's going to give you Buddy Hield like production in terms of games played. I think Buddy
Right.
went for 82 games this past season. I mean, talk about Iron Man. But to you, like, what is the best case Jonathan Kaminga outcome? Because it sounds like to you the worst case would be getting someone like Emmanuel Quickley that's expensive, that doesn't really move the needle in that regard. Because look at the fact that Podziemski showed his flashes this season. They play the same position. If Pods breaks out, then you have another ball handler and Quickley. But it's like, all right, who's your big? Who's your rim protector aside from Draymond? Where are all the other ingredients to this recipe coming from? Because you don't have that much money to spend. In fact, you have nothing to spend aside from some bargain players and vet minimums and
mid-level
accepting guys.
You mentioned the Nets. They have stated interest. If they're willing to go up to 30 or so for Kuminga, which I don't think is unreasonable, then maybe it could be Cam Johnson and, if it could be I guess stretch 4, you might call Cam Johnson, who can really shoot and has some experience in big moments despite being on the Nets the last couple years. Just a guy, I feel like he's a playoff player that you could trust. And then maybe, sneak Cam Thomas just does not seem like a Steve Kerr player, but I don't know. Maybe Keon Johnson is available. Maybe Zaire Williams. I don't know. If there's something where you could do Cam Johnson plus a couple of guys you think can be at the end of your rotation, that intrigues me. The Bulls have been mentioned a lot. I've heard both Kobe White and Vucevic suggested. It would be funny if they somehow ended up with both Vucevic and Jimmy Butler after all that trade deadline.
Doesn't Vooch though kind of contradict the whole pace thing that Steve Kerr always talks about?
Well, I think that pace thing might see some changes based on personnel. I don't know if pace is going to continue to be the thing. I think pace of moving the ball, yes, but I don't know that this is a run and gun team if we're building around Jimmy Butler from the start. The other name I heard, though, is Kobe White.
He's fun. He's very fun. I'd be interested to see how he looks somewhere else that isn't Chicago, where they just say, hey, you got the green light of all green lights. Go give us 35.
Okay, but hear me out here. He is on a remarkable contract. Kobe White is $12 million, made $12 million this year. Next year, he makes 13. Now he'd be a free agent after that. So this would have to be a thing where you were planning to re-sign him. And it is another small guard, although not as small as Steph Curry, probably, or probably a little bigger than Steph and Pods. But still a small guard if you're going to be playing him with Steph or Pods. But man, let me tell you, he can really score. And he is, if you could bring Kobe White off the bench as your sixth man, then you can run with your second unit. And it's the sort of scoring boost that they really could have used a lot of times this year. And because he is so affordable, I think you could be talking about, Kobe White and, I don't know, maybe Jalen Smith. Take a flyer on a lanky shooting center who hasn't ever really panned out, right? Maybe you can get him to give you Patrick Williams. I don't know that does anything for you. He's on a not so good contract, but it's another shot at a player who, while he is not exciting, he is reliable and he'll follow Steve Kerr's instructions better than I think you're getting out of Jonathan Kuminga. If you want to get really weird, maybe there's a way to get Zach Collins and Kobe White. I don't know. I don't like Zach Collins very much, but he is a big body and he does have, he's been in this league a long time. I feel like there is probably a combination of Bulls players, including Kobe White, Now, if it's Vucevic, if I'm the Warriors, I'm much less interested. But I'm not running the Warriors, and we know that they were interested in Vucevic. So my instinct is that the Bulls, especially as I've seen more and more smoke around that over the last couple of days, are one of the top candidates in this trade. And then in the absence of a specific third team to throw out there, there's plenty of places you could look at this. But rather than that, I think there is just this sense that the summer is going to be filled with massive player movement, right? Whether it's Durant, Giannis, Trae Young's name is flying around there. The number 2 draft pick is potentially something that could be on the move if the Spurs want to, accelerate their timeline. Like there's Paul George. I've heard Joel Embiid's name thrown around, right? Lots of stuff could happen.
John said it's going to be the craziest offseason in NBA history.
That's right. And if that is true, it's going to be a good thing for the Warriors, because while I don't think they have the firepower to go get a Giannis, I do think that when lots of trades are happening, lots of teams need help in some way, right? Moving salary, adding a third team to a trade to make the numbers work, all that sort of thing. I don't know that Kuminga specifically can be part of those deals, but the Warriors can be part of those deals in a variety of ways that might make the Kuminga situation give it a little more clarity.
Kobe White last year, 20 points per game, shot at 37% from 3, 90% from the charity stripe. You like that?
And that
4.5 assists
37
per game.
He's
2.5 turnovers.
He takes like Steph Curry difficulty threes.
Yeah,
so I think
it's Chicago, dude. Like they're just
exactly.
Like, have
he was
fun.
Their best
Put
player.
on a show for the United Center.
He was their best player for half the year. So on the Warriors, I think he'd be a 40% 3-point shooter. Like he is a good shooter. He also attacks the rim for a guy his size really well. Like he's just
he dunked over Wemby.
He's a fun offensive player, and I think
he's
Warriors
a fun dude
really
in general. Like he's a good personality. When you want to talk about good fits, because that was something that Kerr mentioned after the season was done. He was like, we just had a good locker room, man. And you would think, like, by the way that fans were talking about the whole Kuminga situation, you would have thought there was some toxicity, that there was some, underlying things going on to where the locker room had some turmoil, but it didn't sound like it was that way at all. There was a lot of, this was one of the most fun teams I've ever coached. They bought in, they came to practice every single day and worked. And Kobe White's one of those guys that would be a fan favorite. And he just seems cool, man. Just seems like a cool dude. And you want more of those guys in your franchise, not players that, can play, but are just complete jackasses. And there are plenty of them out there.
And it's noteworthy that he is one of the lowest paid guys. I mean, again, it's just for one more year, but he is one of the lowest paid guys of all of the dudes that we've mentioned, and he is better than a lot of them. So there's a lot to like if you could make that work. I think the Bulls, again, would have to want Kuminga, and Kuminga would have to want the Bulls, and then probably you'd have to figure out who else you would get with Kobe White, because Kuminga's not going to sign for $12 million. So there's a lot to figure out there, but I think if I'm a Warriors fan, of all the partners I've heard, that's the most encouraging to me, because there are a variety of interesting pieces on the Bulls that might help make the Warriors better.
How quickly do you think it would happen? You think as soon as the Warriors can get it done, they get it done? Or do you think there's going to be a few weeks of summer where we're looking at Golden State and wondering if maybe, just maybe, Kuminga is being locked in as a potential fit? Because that's the big thing with Kuminga, fit to next year's team. We know he's got talent. We know he can score. It's just whether he can pass the ball to Steph Curry, because apparently that's what pisses off Steve Kerr.
I think we can say with great certainty that Jonathan Kuminga's deal will not be the first deal of the offseason, right? There are just chips that are going to have to fall. Certainly, like, just think about it from the perspective of, if I'm a team that believes I have even a minuscule chance of getting involved in the Giannis Antetokounmpo sweepstakes, I'm not even taking a phone call about Jonathan Kuminga until I'm positive that's not happening for me. You know, if I think Kevin Durant might be on the table, with all due respect to Jonathan Kuminga, I'm hanging up the phone on the Warriors until I figure out these other situations.
And the Warriors are probably going to try to get involved in those two deals, and the way that they'd get involved is with Kuminga, right? So they're going to at least make the phone call.
Well, that's it. That part's interesting. I don't know if they can sign and trade as part of a multi-team deal. We should look into that. But yes, whether it's with Kuminga or around a Kuminga deal, the Warriors will want to be involved in those conversations for the big name players as well. And I think it's more than likely that Kuminga is dealt with after those things, after the dust settles a little bit. But I will say, draft night is always a wild card. And especially in a draft where it sounds like, obviously outside of the number 1 overall pick, people are thinking about moving around. That is a night to watch. But if there's no Kuminga move on draft night, then I would say probably you got to wait for the Giannis and KD and whatever other chips to fall first.
I know you're a big college basketball guy, Kolski. You been studying your tape yet? Getting ready for the Warriors' 41st pick? Do we have anyone in mind that you like?
I actually literally watched more footage of Cooper Flagg scrimmaging with Team USA than I watched college basketball this season.
Probably the last 5 years combined.
You know, I've had, this was really the first year where I didn't even watch the tournament. What
was your favorite era of college basketball? Because you got some years on me. Like for me personally, it was going back to like D Brown and Darren Williams and
that's it. That's
Hansbrough. Like that to me, 05 college basketball.
Yeah.
Pitino at Louisville taking them to the Final Four. Like I can name every player from every team. A little Kevin Pittsnoggle action in West Virginia.
Yes, that's my era as well. Specifically, though, you named the one team that I ever really loved in college basketball is that Illinois team. Luther Head's Illinois team is what I would call them. But
Augustine.
James Augustine. Yeah. I was an absolute diehard fan of that specific Illini team, to the point where I wouldn't give up the Darren Williams is going to be better than Chris Paul thing for easily 6 years into their career. Finally, I had to admit I took an L on that one, but I love Darren Williams so much. I thought he was so clutch.
It's a great era, man. It was around the time Stanford had Josh Childress. Who else?
I go back a little further than you probably to the previous Stanford Twins. You know, that was the
dude, I'm a Bearcats guy. Like we haven't made the tournament in 6 years. We suck. Like 2000s, Bobby Huggins. Like those were the days.
Huggy Bear as a Bearcat is where I still watched college. But you know, I do some study on the draft picks because lately I've had to really understand picks like 13 through 20 if I want to know anything about what the Bulls are doing. So
give me the full scout on Hanson Yang from China for the Warriors. You got it already? How's his touch around the rim?
Yeah, no, I can't help you with second rounders. So I will dig into all of the various draft guides and YouTube videos soon enough, and we'll see if we can come up with a second round sleeper for the Warriors. I will say Draymond Green was one of my 3 or 4 favorite college players of all time. I remember the first time I saw him freshman year in a t-shirt, chubbier than my daughter, just dropping dimes as a freshman power forward. I fell in love, and I was hard on Draymond that draft. Like, I couldn't believe nobody took him in the first round, and it was very exciting being in the Bay watching and covering the Warriors that they took him. That was a thrilling draft moment for me when I still watched college basketball.
Yeah, it's funny because all those guys, even like Festus Ezeli, I remember him at Vanderbilt. Iggy, obviously, you remember his Arizona days. The only one that I don't remember in college was Clay. Like, truly, I diehard college basketball guy, especially back in the day. And I watched Coleman basketball here and there up in Wazoo, but I do not remember him in college at all.
No, me neither. No, he did not register in college, and I was extremely surprised when they drafted him. Turned out all right, though.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Matt Kolski, you're all right, my friend. Let's do this again sometime soon. This is
Yes,
Locked On
sir.
Warriors. Check it out on YouTube and wherever you get your audio podcast. Peace.